start the day. There you go. Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to hear a little bit more of Richard. Thank you for saving me. All right, so. How can I know that I'm on the right path? How can I know I'm on the way? Oh, it's easy. you, Daniel. That was Daniel. I love that. That's how I know I'm on my way, that there were stepping stones along the way, along our journey, along our path. That's a wonderful reassurance that we walk forward with the guidance, with the energy of spirit. That our every step really is ordered and that we call life. So thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you to the 15 Trio as always for bringing us wonderful, wonderful music. And good morning and welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone who is tuning in to this wonderful service this morning. Can you believe that we are over of the second month of this new year? We're also moving and nearing towards the end of Black History Month. And I have been using
then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. You see, the call of life is always upward and onward. There's always a progression to life that says, let us move forward. We've got to move forward no matter what, because we're always in a state of unfolding and progressing and growing and evolving, onward and upward. And we know that this is a natural state. We're always in it. We're always unfolding. We're always evolving. We're always growing. We're always changing and moving into and from one state into another. It happens very naturally because that is the progression of life. We are not the same as when we were 10 years ago or when you were 5 years old. You are completely different, always moving. And yet, how many times do we find ourselves in a place where we are obsessing and worrying about the future, right? We may even be fearful of the unknown. We know that it's moving, life is changing and unfolding, and it will be different. But we might have a little fear about this process of moving forward, apprehensive about what may be or what may come. And our anxiety might even be heightened and worsened if the present state that we are in is one of challenge or one of difficulty. You know, if the present state that we're in is hard for us, it's scary in and of itself. And then to think, will this continue? Will it be worse? Will we be worse off than we are today? Or will it be better tomorrow? And we get into this cycle. And we might even find ourselves, because of that, fearing moving into the upward, forward progression of life. Fearing what might be coming. Living our lives based on what we think might be waiting for us in the future. But you can't live life in dread. We can't live our lives in dread of the future, right? Or living in fear based on some limited perception of what we think might happen. Dr. King also said this, and this is the basis of my message this morning. He said, we must walk on in the days ahead with an audacious faith in the future. We must walk on in the days ahead, right, with an audacious faith in the future. Now, I love that thought. Having an audacious faith. Now, the word audacious, as I shared a few Sundays ago, it carries this meaning. There are two, but I'm going to use this meaning. It says, a showing of a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. To be audacious means a showing of a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. Now, I like that Dr. King put those two words together, audacious and faith, because actually, to consciously and willingly walk into the unknown, right, is going to take both of those things. It's going to take some audaciousness, and it's going to take a healthy measure of faith. But there's a distinction I want us to understand, because I believe that if you have faith, it can eliminate the risk, and it increases your boldness. If audaciousness is having the surprising ability to take bold risks, but if you have audacious faith, then that faith can eliminate the risk, because as we get into understanding more about what faith really is, there is no risk. And what it will do is increase your boldness to walk, to take that next step on your journey. So I wanted us to take a deeper dive into faith, because we know, it has a spiritual and a religious connotation and quality about it. However, in New Thought, we always like to move beyond just the literal interpretation, but to see what does this word carry for us, this concept of faith. What does it carry metaphysically for us? We know that it must have some understanding of our power to, as a co-creator and a manifester for our lives. That faith isn't just a spiritual energy, it is that, but it's more than that, that it is something about it that enables us to be a co-creator and a manifestor of our lives. It's sort of like an activating spiritual force, an activation of spiritual substance. So I wanted us to look deep. Let's take this deep dive here. And we'll be using The Revealing Word, which is a book it's a compilation of Charles Fillmore, who is the co-founder of Unity. It is his understanding of basic concepts and terms that we hear often. And so we're going to look at his definition for faith, and I'm going to use The Revealing Word. I like to show people my book is really worn out and it's old, but hey, it means I've been using it a lot. And he wrote, there are 3 full pages on the various aspects of faith, and we're not going to be able to get to not even scratching the surface of it today, but we'll see how Spirit wants us to use this whole concept, because I think if we're going to walk boldly into what is showing up before us, we must really, really work on having an audacious faith, being willing to take bold risks, because we don't know, to walk into this future of what is, but we want to be able to do so with strength and understanding that it's going to be all right. But working with our faith factor is what's going to help us to handle this journey, where we are in our stage of evolution and where we are in our state as a world and as a nation. And so, audacious faith. So we're going to look at faith. I want to read the first paragraph of what he says in these 3 pages of his definition. He says, faith, the perceiving power of the mind, linked with the power to shape substance. This is a metaphysical definition for faith. The perceiving power of the mind, linked with the power to shape substance. Now, we'll get into this a little bit in a minute. He also says it is spiritual assurance, the power to do the seemingly impossible. It is a magnetic power that draws unto us our heart's desire from the invisible spiritual substance. Faith is a deep inner knowing that which is sought is already ours for the taking. And then he quotes here now from the Bible, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Now there's 2 other pages, and we'll go into those a little later. So it is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. It's spiritual assurance. It is the power to do the seemingly impossible. It is a magnetic power that draws unto us our heart's desire from the invisible spiritual substance. And faith is a deep inner knowing that that which is sought is already ours for the taking. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. So in this first paragraph alone, there's so much meat here that I wanted us to be able to dissect it a little bit so we can ingest it. You can't eat the whole thing at once. We take small bites and let it sit in our being and in our heart and in our understanding, because this is an energy that we want to be able to use, to activate, right? So that we can affect as a co-creator and a manifester of life. So the first thing, the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. Well, what does that mean? Well, to perceive in a new thought or a metaphysical concept, to perceive is to see, or I like to say to perceive, right? To see in your mind, in your awareness, in your consciousness, that which is not yet visible, but to see it in the inner realm of your being, in your mind and your consciousness. And once you can then see it in your mind, then you link it, this vision, this seeing that you have, you then link it with the power to shape substance. You have the power to shape substance. And where does that power lie in you? It lies in your imagination, in your imaging factor. So you can perceive, to imagine, to image, to create a vision, to see it, and then you take the seeing that you have and you link it to the substance of God, and you begin to shape, because the substance of God is all around us. That is the creative force of the universe. You can't see it, but it is all around us, right? It's the stuff of God, the energy of God, the creative force of God. And so we take our ability to see inwardly, to image and to create an image, and we link it with this substance, this stuff of God. And in that process, we become conscious manifestors, right? So faith is your ability to perceive, to go into this inner realm and see what is possible, and then link that possibility, that image that you're holding, to the substance of God. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it is your ability to connect with the divine, to connect with the substance of God, and to bring it into your life, because this substance, this stuff, is that which is in back of everything that is created. Every living thing is created out of the substance, the energy, the essence of God. So when you are using your faith, right, you are seeing what you desire, you're seeing it in your consciousness, and you're holding it in your consciousness, and you hold it until that which you are seeing is now registered in the substance of God. It's now registered and connected to, linked to, attached to the energy of God. And when that process happens, what you see, what you perceive, and what you hold, and you link it to the substance of God, now you have the makings of manifestation. Okay? So this is what faith is, because you understand this process, that it is a spiritual process. And this conscious connection that you're making to the stuff of God, to this creative energy of God, is what enables it to come into being. So your task is to just keep seeing. There are two steps in this process that I want you to really get. The first one is to hold and see and create in your mind. That's what you need to do. And then you need to somehow connect to the substance of God, to the energy of God, to be consciously connected to God. That's a two-step process. Hold, create an image, a feeling, a desire, a want, a prayer, a need. Define it. And then take that and then automatically begin to rest in God, connect to God, have faith in God. This is the process. You create the vision that you want, and then you have faith in God to bring it about. But those two energies are needed. Your vision, and you must be linked to God, to the substance of God. Vision, God. Desire, God. Prayer, God. Want, God. Need, God. Those two things are very possible. And when you understand that your task is to keep seeing that which you want and holding that vision in your mind, this is faith, holding it, not wavering, not skipping around. Holding it is the faith factor, holding the vision that you see in your heart. Jesus called it believing too. It's what you believe. Holding it in your heart, that's your task. And as you hold it, you connect to God. I hold, I connect to God. That process is a very powerful process. You're connecting to the energy of God, which means now with God, all things are possible. Now you've got something working here. And then you get to the second definition that Mr. Fillmore said, which is spiritual assurance. In his definition, he said that faith was spiritual assurance. Wow, that's really good. That's easy. Faith is spiritual assurance, not spiritual guessing or spiritual even hoping, even though the biblical definition says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, but it is not a wishy-washy hope. It's an assured hope, right? So spiritual assurance then comes from this biblical definition of Hebrews 11, which many of us know, which reads like this. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And that was the NLV, I believe. The NASB version says it this way. Now faith is the certainty of things hoped for, a proof of things not seen. So when you have faith, real faith, you're going to get some proof. Proof. It's the substance of things hoped for, but it's the evidence of the things that are not seen. And then the NLT version says it, faith is the confidence that which we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. So here we go. We're perceiving, to use Mr. Fillmore's definition, we are pre-seeing it in our mind, right? It's not out here yet, but we are seeing it, and when we hold that, that's going to activate our assurance that it's going to manifest. So to have this faith then is to have confidence in the things that we hope for, the things that we can't see, but this faith then becomes evident. At some point, that which you are perceiving and pre-seeing in your mind and holding in your mind and in your heart and in your consciousness, and you have now connected your consciousness to God, at some point that process moves into manifestation. That it will be done unto you according to how Jesus said, according to your faith. It's a process. It's a sure thing when you are enacting the qualities, what I call the faith factor, the vision to pre-see and the ability to connect to God. Pre-see, connect to God. So we know that we can't physically see God, but what we can see are all those things that come into being. We see the evidence of God. You're an evidence of God. I'm the evidence of God, of good, right? And so once we begin to know that we can have faith in God, right? That faith is to pre-see it and then to connect that pre-seeing with God. Then I have faith in God. And once we begin to develop and have faith in God, then everything else becomes a little easier. So if we have to then connect to God, we have to see what we want, and we have to connect to the divine and connect to God. It's very important then that you have the right God concept. If we are to have faith in God, one of the shortest commandments that Jesus gave, well, we know that thou shalt love the Lord thy God, but he also said very quickly, have faith in God. So faith has something to do with God, and it has something to do with our ability to see what we desire and to ask for. So if we are to have faith in God, we want to make sure that our God concept is really clear, so that when we connect to God, we are connecting to and holding a right view and a right consciousness of God. Now, we can't define God in totality, because that's really impossible. But if we're going to have faith in God, we do need to work with our faith concept of God, right? Our concept. Now, in the race consciousness, that is, in the consciousness of the world, there's this notion of a God that resembles a human. And not only that, but it also has the characteristics of being human, right? That means it could be a being that can be punishing, that can be harsh, judgmental, exacting, walking around with the book, making sure that noting everything that you do and making a judgment about whether you're doing it correctly. A God that, if it's made in the image and after the likeness of a human, can be very whimsical, changing its mind, depending upon whether you are a sinner or you are a saint. You might get the blessings and the goodness of God. So when we hold that concept, that kind of an image of God, it's hard to have faith in that. How are you going to have faith in something that you're already fearing? Because did I make a mistake? So here's what I say. It's hard to have faith in that kind of an image of God. You're either going to have a fear of God or faith in God. When you think that God is a being that is there to judge you, to punish you, to watch your every move, then you might develop a fear of God. And I don't know about you, but most of us came up having this fear of God and not using the word fear in the biblical sense, which means to be in awe of God, but to actually literally have a fear of God, right? So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, do you have more of a fear of God or faith in God? Do you have a fear of God or faith in God? Now, if you have a fear of God, you might not be willing to take those bold risks that are necessary for you to take if you're going to grow and evolve and move on your journey. Because you're not really, sure about moving into the unknown, because you're not sure how God's going to show up, or if God's going to show up in your life. And how will God show up in your life, especially if you make or take a misstep or you make a mistake? How does God handle your mistakes and your missteps? And if it's going to be with the result of, will you be punished or will you be penalized or chastised? Then you're not going to be willing to take those bold risks and steps, because you'll be a little leery of how God's going to show up and if God's going to show up. And so you basically have a fear of God as opposed to faith in God, right? Is God a mean little man up in the sky? Sometimes people, I have to laugh when they always go, the man upstairs. And I always cringe, because I'm like, where upstairs where? The God, God in the clouds, a man in the clouds. God is not in the cloud. God is the cloud. God is everything. Not a being, but being itself, the energy and essence of all that is of life, not just a person, right? And so, when we talk about God, even as Jesus used to describe God sometimes as God as Father, he said, God is my Father. But I believe when he was talking about God as Father, he was not talking about God as a being, a human being, or some kind of special being that is just, a being like a father. He's talking about God as Father as the source, the concept of God as source, the concept of God as the essence of life, the essence of the creation of all that is life. Right? So he's talking about this creative source of all that is, and this creative source that is also absolute good, absolute love, the high qualities of this essence that is God, the source that is God, this pure goodness that is God, right? Because even he said, even though he called God his Father, he said that God is spirit. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. That God is spirit. So that means the essence of God is not just contained in a being, but it is a spirit, the spirit that permeates all living things, all creation. And he was very clear on that. And so we are then to expand our concept beyond the man in the sky or a little limited being that has human qualities. God is above and beyond that, the essence of all that is. And when we can have this spiritual understanding of the nature of God, as being the essence of all that is, the creative force, the creative power, the power of love, the power of peace, the power of harmony, the presence of all of those things, not necessarily contained in a being, but the beingness of all those things in and of itself, then we can have faith in that. We can, we can more willingly see the nature of God. God as being what we would say in New Thought as principle. Principle in action, because a principle is a sure thing. There's the principles of mathematics that do not change. Principles of addition, multiplication, subtraction, 2 plus 2 will always be 4. And there's an infinite number of ways we can get to even using the principle of addition to get to 4, but the principle is always the same. This is where the assurance comes in, when we see God not as some whimsical judging being who changes at the drop of a hat, but God as a loving force, a loving principle, a loving essence of creation. As a principle, it's true. It will work all the time. God's presence is always here, the same today, yesterday, and will be tomorrow. The goodness of God as principle is here right now. Now that's an essence of God we can have faith in. That you can trust. You can trust 2 plus 2 is 4, and you can trust that the presence of the all-loving, almighty, everywhere substance of God is available to us, and it is good. Absolute good, not good and evil, absolute good. Well, that's a God we can have faith in. Not a man, but a presence, a principle, a creative force. So once we begin to understand the spiritual assurance we would get when we have a right understanding of God, then we can move into these other concepts that Mr. Fillmore talked about in describing faith. He said, the next thing he said was that it was the power to do the seemingly impossible. The power to do the seemingly impossible. Now, I want to be clear here. You of yourself can do nothing. Of yourself, you can do nothing. The scripture says, with Christ I can do all things. But you of yourself can do nothing, because the scripture puts it this way in Matthew 19:26. It says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And the NLT version says it this way: humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible. Now, the operative word here, or words, I hope you picked up on it, is with God. With God, everything is possible. With God. So often when we have to face big challenges or some daunting task or something we've never done before, or it seems just too big for us to do, we think, well, how can I do that? I can't do that. And I say, no, you can't. Yes, it's not possible for you, but you don't have to manufacture the way to do it. God does. You don't have to somehow gather all the strength there is to create this strength to do it. The strength of God is already present. God can do that. God is the strength in you that you might need. You don't have to figure out and come up with all the different ways that you got to figure out how to handle this. God is the way. You don't have to figure it out. You see, your task is not to do that. You don't have to do that. Your task is to have faith in God. That's your task. Because God does with God, all things are possible. It didn't say that you can make all things possible in and of yourself. It is with God. So what your task is to keep turning to God. Keep giving it over to God, to keep your awareness on God, to keep your mind stayed on God, right? Not the thing, not the task, but on God. So when we can do that, then it says you can do the seemingly impossible because it's not you doing the doing. It's God doing it. You will follow through on what is given, but the creation of moving something from impossible to possibility is God's doing. God is the possibility. So we rely, again, not on ourselves, but on God. And when we begin to do this, when we get this turning towards God, all of a sudden there's an action involved. Faith becomes a verb. It becomes an action. You're turning towards God. And when you begin to move to the turning towards God, you're now moving. This movement that you're doing is now an activating force. It's now a verb. Faith is now a verb. Faith is now an action statement, right? And Mr. Fillmore says that it is a magnetic power that draws unto us our heart's desire from the invisible spiritual substance. Let me read that again. It is a magnetic power. You don't create the magnetic power. You turn towards God. That turning towards God, holding your vision of what you want, turning towards God. Holding the vision, acknowledging God. Holding the vision, opening to God. That turning, that acknowledging, that holding, that resting in the presence and power of God all of a sudden becomes a magnetic power that will draw to you, it says, draw unto us our heart's desire from the invisible spiritual substance. The invisible spiritual substance is God itself. And the magnetic power comes from us turning towards that force, that presence, that substance. So faith is a magnetic power. I love that. The stronger your faith, the greater your magnetic pull. The stronger your faith, the greater your magnetic pull to bring that presence and power of God. So that you can do the things that Jesus as the Christ did because he had that magnetic power of faith. I'm going to walk on this water. I'm going to raise this body. See, I'm going to heal this manner of sickness and disease. I'm going to feed the multitude of that. It's that faith and that power that turning towards God was able to be expressed through him and manifested through him. Right? But it was God who was doing it, but his faith activated it. And that's where we come in, as having faith that is a magnetic possible. Faith, this primary source. And the thing is, this source, I can have faith in God because this presence, this creative substance is not only with me, but it's within me. With God, all things are possible. But the possibilities lie within me because God is within me. Good is within me. And so I'm turning within to touch the source that is present. And once I touch this source often, and just acknowledge and just relish it and dwell in it, and all you got to do is just stay in the substance of God. Then things begin to unfold and happen for you. Then you've activated this magnetic power to produce, to move things from the invisible realm into the visible realm. Then you get to which is why Mr. Fillmore says, lastly, he says, faith is a deep inner knowing that which is sought is already ours for the taking. And then he closes that paragraph with, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It is the deep inner knowing that which is sought is already ours for the taking. See, I don't have to create it. I hold the vision. I create the vision in my mind of what it is that I feel I need and want. But that's already established in the substance of God, in the infinite presence of God where everything is. And my ability to see what it is and then turn toward God, see what it is, call forth the power, see what it is, dwell in the power, link it together. That's what Mr. Fillmore said. Faith was the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape the substance. So I hold it and I link it to the substance of God. in my mind, in my consciousness. And when I do that, I know it's already there for the taking. It's mine. It's already created, because everything that is, to be created is already created in the mind and heart and soul and essence of the spiritual substance that we call God. It already is. The blessings, some folks say the blessings already are. The good you seek already is seeking you. It's already established. You don't have to make it happen. It already is. We just participate by allowing it to come forth, holding that vision. That's what having faith in God will do. The faith to perceive what I want and then connect it to God is to have faith in God. That's the process. That is so good, because the good you're seeking is already available. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to plead it. You just have to know. Be still and know that I am God. Just still all the clamoring thoughts in your mind about why it can't happen and how will it happen and if it will happen. Still all of that. Hold the vision of your desire and then turn towards God, knowing God has already created it. It is yours for the taking if you do not doubt. Now, we'll get a little further into at some other point in time when Jesus said, have faith in whatever you ask for in prayer, believing that you have it, you shall have it. Believing you shall have it. So I want us to practice. I want us to use this, because this should be truth, and it should be something, we call it practical Christianity. So I want you to practice this, because in these days ahead, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, we're going to have to walk in these days ahead with an audacious faith. We're going to have to tackle what is coming our way, what is here and present in this world and what we're facing right now. We're going to have to start having to use our audacious faith, our spiritual powers as conscious co-creators and manifestors of all that is good. We have to do that, right? We activate it. So I want you to practice. I want you to practice, and there are remember the two levels I talked about, right? I want you to practice exercising your faith, developing your faith, strengthening your faith. And the two things that you will need at the beginning, one is the ability to perceive or precede. That is, so you're going to practice. Take something that you want to manifest or you want to see in your life. Now, as Stretton Smith used to say, pick something within the realm of your believability. Don't start off, if you're going to practice this, with developing our faith factor. We want to strengthen our faith factor and our ability, right, to exercise and to use and to have faith in God. But don't start off with something that you know you don't believe in to begin with. Because when you do that, you've already nullified the process. You don't believe it. Well, I'll see if if God's really good. I think I'm going to wish for, right now, $1 million to appear before me. Now, is that possible? With God, it is. But do you believe it in your realm of believability? No. So you don't pick something that is already casting a doubt in your mind and consciousness just as a way to sort of test God. This is not how the law works, okay? I'm going to pick these two things just to see if 2 + 2 is 4. So I'm going to pick 5 and see if I can make it 4. No. Don't start with what you don't believe. So start with something you believe, you desire, and you believe is possible, okay? But I want to exercise by holding that vision that you desire in your mind. And then I want you to go to the second step. You hold it, you create it, you perceive it, use your imagination, just make it full, bring it to life. And then hold that, now switch your thought process, your energy process to contemplating about God. You don't even have to say that, God, I want this, just this is what I am, this is what I'm holding. Now I'm going to link it to the presence of God. Not linking it to watching God and figuring out how God's going to do it. That's not what I'm talking about. You hold the vision and then you link your consciousness to the presence and power of God. Just start contemplating God, thinking about God, holding God, turning God into your heart and mind and just dwelling there. dwelling there. So every time you think about this for a few minutes, you hold God, you turn towards God, you rest in God, you affirm the presence of God, you acknowledge the power of God at work in all things, not just in the thing you want, but all things. Just start expanding your awareness, your realization that God is. Have the dream, have the prayer, and then God. Spend time with God is. Yes, God is, right? So you're linking these two together. Just practice with something that you want to have. So you see and you know. See it and then know it. See it and then know God, right? Image it and know God. Affirm it and then know God. Pray for it and then know God. That's a process you can start to work with and practice. And I guarantee that whatever you have taken, you have chosen, will manifest for you in the right way and at the right time. You will have the assurance of the things that you can't see out here, but the things you can see, it will become evident for you in your life. So begin to start this practice to have an audacious faith. That is the willingness to take a bold, seemingly bold risk. Take a risk and see if you cannot begin to develop and expand your capacity to have faith in God. Because if you really begin to have faith in God, and as Jesus said, without doubting in your heart, that's going to be a whole other thing. You can't doubt in your heart. That's why I want you to see the vision and just think about God. Not God as, well, God is a little bit of God, God is a... No, think about the allness, the isness, the goodness, the absoluteness of God. That's all you need to do. Think about the absoluteness and the goodness, right, of God. Everywhere present, in everything, right here, God, right now. Just practice building this awareness and the consciousness and the energy of God. And when you can do that, everything that you image will come to manifest. But it is a process. With God, all things are possible. With God, you do not do anything without God. With God, everything you do, I'm doing this with God. See, with the presence and the power. I see and I know. Be still and know that God is. I see and I know. In the stillness, I know. I see, I meditate, I contemplate, I know God. Because if you know God, then that truth will set you free. There's nothing else to know but God. And when you have this knowingness of God, you have the faith of God and in God. Right? So you're not fearful, you are faithful. Fear less fear and more faith in and of God. And so we're going to continue this journey a little bit next week, looking into faith, how we can actually work with it so that we become the true co-creators that we have been created to be. And to walk through this journey, as Dr. Martin Luther King says, we must walk in the days ahead with an audacious faith in the future. I'm going to have an audacious faith in the future because the future is now. I practice now. I live now in the boldness and in the presence of God. So I see you being blessed beyond measure. I see you practicing this technique of really, really just visioning within and connecting often. Because you were meant to be an audacious, not only faith person of faith, but an audacious manifester, bringing in the presence of God from the invisible into visibility. So I'm going to invite you to join us next week as we continue our journey. In the meantime, walk audaciously. Be bold. Take that risk because you don't walk alone. The Spirit of the living God is with you and within you, and your path is assured. Blessings and namaste. Yes. Well, let's take a time and welcome Daniel. Once again, thank you.
Thank you. And in our journey that takes us along those stepping stones, it's not always easy, right? We have dark times, but our job is to shine our light into the dark, always. Even the full moon has a dark side, where all the colors go away. The eye is captured by the bright light. My shadows have more to say. My shadows have more to say. My shadows have more to say. Dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. Without the dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. So I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Secrets and dark truths are hidden. I've looked inside to see what's mine. There's a past I've not yet written. It's because of my darkness I shine. It's because of my darkness I shine. It's because of my darkness I shine. Without the dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. Without the dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. So I'll shine my light into the dark. Shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. There is a lost child in the nightmares, between the shadow and the soul. I reveal myself in thick-skinned layers. Beast and angel make a home. Beast and angel make a home. Beast and angel make a home. Without the dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. Without the dark, we would never see the stars. We would never see the stars. Never see the stars. So I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Ooh, I'll shine my light into the dark. Come on and shine your light into the dark. Oh, shine your light into the God's light into the dark. Oh, oh, shine God's light into the dark. Oh, shine, shine your light into the dark, and I'll shine my light into the dark.
Wonderful, Daniel. Thank you. I love that concept. Sometimes when we experience the dark and we can't see our way, that is our time to practice shining our light. And when we shine our light, the path before us unfolds, and we have the faith to take the step that is ours to take. So we shine our light in the dark. God's presence as divine light is always with us and within us, so we know which way to go. So let's take a moment, thank you, Richard, to just kind of go within for a moment and to take the beauty of this message and the beauty of the songs we've heard to know that we are journeying forward and upward. And with faith leading and guiding us, we have the assurance that all will be well. So I invite you to relax, to take a few deep, deep breaths, conscious breaths, slowly and fully, taking in the maximum amount of this divine gift of life as the breath that you can, allowing your body to let go as you exhale. And to fill your physical being and your inner being with this breath that is God. The breath is the Almighty and the fullness thereof. So breathe. Release. And let go. I breathe in my faith in God. And I let go of any doubt and concern, any worries, anxiety about the present or the future. I am here and now, for God is here and now. I trust and have faith in God. And just affirm that thought in your own heart. Very simply, I have faith in God. I have faith in God. That is, I have faith in the absolute goodness of life. I have faith that this goodness will lead me to my right and perfect place and expression. I have faith that this goodness will bless me beyond measure. I have faith in the goodness that is God. I have faith in God. Just rest now in that thought, in that knowing. I have faith in God. Oh, thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you for the good that blesses us always and in all ways. We know that everything is right, for there is an order to your presence. And so we give deep gratitude and thanksgiving for everything now truly is unfolding in divine and most perfect order. So take a deep breath. And let it be. And so it is. Amen and amen. Beloved ones, our affirmation for this week that you can take with you and practice, it reads as thus: I know and believe that God is with me with every step I take, and that I am being led in right and perfect ways. I am in the upward, forward progression of life, and nothing can stop me now, for I walk into the possibilities of my life with an audacious faith. May I be fearless and faithful. And so it is. Praise the good. Amen and amen. Yes, that's a faith. We know that everything is going to work out fine, beloved ones. So it's in this consciousness now, let us bless our offerings and our tithes and our giving to life. Let's be audacious and bold in that process as well. For God is within us and with us every step of the way. So our prayer for our blessings for our offering says, divine love through me blesses and multiplies, right? All that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And may we give abundantly and receive far beyond and exceedingly good ways beyond our imagination even. So we give thanks. Thank you, God, for the blessings of this day, for the blessings in my life. And I open myself to receive and to share fully and freely, knowing with faith that it returns to me, shaken together, overflowing in abundance. So it is, and so it shall be. Amen and amen. Let us now sing our closing songs as we move into this week. And it will be printed on shown on your screen. You light up my life.
When it feels so right, 'cause you truth.